I want to introduce all of you to Secretary Ward, who is the Commonwealth Secretary for Conservation and Natural Resources. She's graciously come here today from a meeting with the governor, which is how we got this rescheduled, to chat with us a little bit about the conservation strategies that she's managing on behalf of the governor of the Commonwealth. If there's any time for a little dialogue, she understands our business is being in the business also of trying to arrange conservation partnering strategies for folks. She and Rebecca had a chance to walk around Caledon, I guess a week or two ago, and spend some time talking about mutual interests of the Secretariat and the company. So without any further ado, and as I indicated, we have our Alexandria office and our Richmond office on Skype so you can see them. So Madam Secretary, welcome.
Great, thank you. It's great to be here.
And
Is that all right? If y'all can hear me, I'll just stand right here unless people there can't see me. I don't know. But anyways, wonderful to be here. It's an honor and privilege to be the Secretary of Natural Resources. I got sworn in the day after Terry McAuliffe got sworn in. I'm a member of his cabinet. He has 13 cabinet secretaries. And within my secretariat, we have the Department of Conservation and Recreation, the Department of Historic Resources, the Department of Game and Inland Fisheries, the Department of Virginia Marine Resources Commission, and the Virginia Museum of Natural History. So together with all those agencies, we are in charge, we're constitutionally charged with protecting the natural resources of the Commonwealth. And how I came to this job is that during Governor Kane's administration, I was appointed to the Virginia Outdoors Foundation, which you all may know holds about 75% of the conservation easements in the Commonwealth. And that agency was at that time charged with protecting 400,000 acres during Tim Kane's term. So I was on the 7-member supervisory board that worked on that initiative. I am a former elected official. I was treasurer of my city in Hampton, Virginia is where I'm from. Prior to that, I practiced law for about 15 years. And then I ran for mayor of Hampton and was reelected I was elected in 2008 and 2012. I went to work for the White House briefly. And then got the phone call from Terry McAuliffe to take this job. I've worked on a lot of land conservation issues as pursuant to my role as in the Virginia Outdoors Foundation and also as mayor. I worked on the effort to make Fort Monroe National Monument, which I know Marstel-Day has been very helpful in terms of the BRAC process and helping us with our environmental assessment. So we're very grateful for that participation. But so now what I work on all the time is, Governor McAuliffe, I don't know if y'all have ever met him, he's a very high energy guy. He always says he'll sleep when he's dead. And I always say it's the one thing I don't agree with him about, because I like to sleep and think a lot better when I get sleep. But he literally doesn't sleep very much, and they have literally had to add a layer of, they call it the state police that follow him around, they call him the EPU, the Executive Protection Unit. They've actually had to add a shift to keep up with him. He's that high energy, and he's all about solving problems. In Virginia, the governor can only run for one term. And so he knows he's got this little window in time to make a difference. And so he's always encouraging us to take risks and be bold and do things that people haven't done before and try to effectuate positive change in the short time that we have. And in that regard, our secretariat is really focused on two things. We have lots of issues, obviously. One of the primary focuses of our secretariat are land conservation and water quality, and specifically the health of the Chesapeake Bay. We actually have a deputy secretary in our secretariat of the Chesapeake Bay. He spends his time full-time on bay issues, and the governor was recently elected the executive chair of the Chesapeake Bay program, which is run by EPA for the health of the bay. We also participate in the Chesapeake Bay Commission and all the other regional and other authorities to do with bay health. But so we spend a lot of time on those, on water quality issues, and we also spend a lot of time, as I said, on land conservation. The governor decided early on that maybe the 400,000 acre goal wasn't the best goal for the Commonwealth at this time. When Tim Kaine did it, it was great. It was amazing what that administration accomplished. But as time has gone on and a lot of the low-hanging fruit has been conserved, and also as tax laws at the federal level have not been clear, and as the economy has been tough for real estate, people have been less incentive to put their land under easement. So one of the things we've developed over the last year is a new initiative called the Virginia Treasures. And the idea is that we're going to focus on quality over quantity. And we're going to look at other things besides how big a piece of property is. When I was on the Virginia Outdoors Foundation, people would walk in the room and they go, we've got a great easement. We could tell us about it. They go, it's 500 acres. And that'd be the first thing they tell you. Not where it was or why it was important or who was going to be able to go there or whether it was geographically diverse. So we're trying to ask those questions now. And we're also trying to get other agencies involved. The Department of Game and Inland Fisheries, for instance, has a lot of discretionary money to make land purchases for public access and for boat ramps and those kinds of things. And the folks working on those kinds of projects weren't getting the credit because they were so small. So now we're focusing on, an acre can be really important depending on where it is. So the governor just announced this Virginia Treasures Initiative in April, and we're really excited about it and can use all the help and guidance and excitement that everybody can bring to the project. And these aren't just state projects. They could be local projects. They could be individual projects. And they involve projects that are fee projects and projects that have public access and projects that don't have public access that are just projects where people have given up or sold off development rights. So that's the primary focus of our day-to-day work. Other than that, we spend a lot of time, I spend a lot of time with my friend John Mitchell here out scouting for projects and coming up with new creative ways. The governor has a theory about the new Virginia economy, that we've got to find new things to replace some of the industries that we've lost in some of the parts of the Commonwealth that have been particularly hard hit, like in Southwest Virginia, where the coal industry and tobacco and all those things are gone. Coal's not gone yet, but it's on its way out. And so you go out to that part of the state, it's a beautiful, amazing part of the state. And a lot of the only assets they have left to capitalize on relates to their natural rural beauty and the resources there, whether it may be Clinch River or the Mayo River, great opportunities for the future for tourism and to bring in some outside dollars and outside attention. So I've spent a lot of time out there talking to local elected officials, and we have a new, I wouldn't say a new generation, but I would say a new decade of conservationists, because even a lot of the people that might be on the other side of the aisle politically, traditionally, than you might think, that would be involved in conservation, or who were more interested in development because they thought it brought more to the tax base, now see that their future really lies in working with us and partnering with us in terms of trying to come out with ways to get more people outside and get more people interested in the outdoors. So in that regard too, one of the things we struggle with is at the Department of Game and Inland Fisheries and the Virginia Marine Resources Commission is trying to bring along that next generation of hunters and fishermen and outdoorsmen who will become our next generation of stewards. And it's not just anecdotal evidence that people just aren't getting outside. One of the things too, you go to the state parks. I don't know have y'all ever been to a state park? Yeah. They have this model of the mom and the dad and the 4 kids. And we were in a meeting the other day. The General Assembly voted to give us $1.4 million this last General Assembly session for yurts. We have one yurt right now. It's at Kipton Peak State Park, right on the Chesapeake Bay. It's really beautiful. I highly recommend if you have the chance to go. I've gone and stayed in it. It's really super cool. So that yurt has been tremendously successful. So the General Assembly gave us $1.4 million to build yurts all over the Commonwealth. And so we're in this meeting and trying to talk about what the inside the yurt's going to look like. And let me say this, as I learned this when I was mayor, is that when I was first mayor, I let everybody else make all the design decisions and land use decisions and sort of tell me what the right thing to do was. And then partway into it, I realized that I was the only possible cork in the bottle to keep them from doing things. And so I started saying, no, we can't paint that building that color. We can't use fake brick, and we can't build any more fake colonial stuff. All this stuff that I started inserting myself into these design decisions because I realized there wasn't anybody really in charge. And so, and when I ran for mayor the second time and got interviewed by the paper about what I'd gotten done while I was mayor, I said, I'm much more proud of what I kept them from doing than what I actually did. So the list was a lot longer on one side. But as Secretary of Natural Resources, we really don't have a head, a person in charge of aesthetics, for lack of a way to describe it. We have VDOT making decisions. We have my agency making decisions, the Department of General Services making decisions, and all these localities making decisions, and nobody's looking at the overall picture saying, does this make sense from Virginia, from a 10,000 foot view? So I've sort of undertaken that. If I find out that somebody's building an ugly bridge or doing something, that I can try to stop, I do. But so I took this yurt project that way, and everybody's like, "You really think you should be involved in choosing the furniture and the fabrics for the inside of the yurts?" I'm like, "Well, y'all shouldn't be trusted. I saw the giraffe fabric and the last one." But anyway, so they wanted to put two sets of twin beds and a queen bed in every yurt. I'm like, "Why?" They said, "Because our state park model is a mom and a dad and 4 kids." I'm like, "When was the last time somebody showed up, that fit that model? I want to see the actual statistics that support this, because that's not who I see coming out here to stay in these things." So I actually think that's probably more of a couple, type thing. But it'd probably be much better off to put just a queen bed in with the plain white Madelaine's white bedspread in there. But I'm working on it. But and as we move forward, we got to look at what the camping trends are and what the outdoor trends are, not what they were 20 years ago. Because that's what happens is they do these master plans for these parks, and it's based on RVs getting bigger and bigger. And should we really be encouraging that? And is that really what you want to have in your parks? Maybe there's something else that we should offer, and we should be looking forward about what are people going to want 10 years from now, because that's how long it takes us to effectuate the plan. So the other thing we're working on, we have 5 unopened state parks, and we are working on a soft opening for those parks. Traditionally, it takes like 20 years to get one open, because you have to get the money to buy the land, and then you have to get the general obligation bond to get the infrastructure for the park. And so we're working on, hey, why can't we just put in a gravel parking lot and let people use this? Why do we have to gate it off and police it and keep people out? Why don't we get them in? And then we'll develop a constituency and a support for the park. So we're working on that. And then in that regard, we're also hoping that next November, or a year from November, we will be voting on a general obligation bond for park infrastructure. There'll be a higher ed bond with it probably as well. But the parks is what brings people out. And so we're really excited about that as well and moving this down the road. But when I was mayor, I used to have a ringtone on my phone that was "Fight the powers that be." So I'd be in a meeting and go, "Fight the powers that be," and people go, "Whose phone is that?" I feel like it's mine. And so one of my children asked me, they said, "Why do you have it on your phone?" I said, "Because I'm fighting the man." And my son asked my husband, he goes, "Who's the man?" He goes, "Your mom's the man." But I really believe, that's one of the great things about working for government is trying to be on the inside and making it better and making it work and making it more functional, especially for folks like you that I know are fighting these battles all the time. And I know you don't do a lot of state stuff, but I am here for you. Would love to work with you. If you got some issues or problems with any of my agencies, I forgot to mention the Department of Environmental Quality is also in my secretariat. I'm, just a phone call and an email away, and answer my own email all day long, and would love to hear from you. So with that, I'll take some questions.
Secretary Ward, question I have, what is the modern demographic now for the parks? Are you finding younger people, single people going in, day trippers as opposed to campers? I'd be interested in hearing more about that.
Day tripping is way up. We have, especially in Northern Virginia and parks that have accessibility to Virginia, a lot of day trips. There is still like this sense now, this is just anecdotal from the park super managers, but the RVs are still getting bigger, which I find hard to believe because I can't find anybody who wants a bigger one, and I keep saying, go ask somebody 30 years old and they think it's really disgusting, right? Well, maybe that's not quite right. They have no interest in taking an RV even if it was for free, right? So I see that trend, leaving. And so instead of building these bigger and longer and wider and more powerful RV sites, I've been fighting against that. In fact, people say, well, they need more amps. I'm like, why? What are they doing, more TV, more air conditioning. So I will say our park superintendents, we have this amazing park staff, and being a park manager in Virginia is like being in the Salvation Army or one of those kinds of organizations. It's a lifestyle. It's not a job where you apply and you do it for 3 years and you leave. It's these people are in it from the time they're kids. A lot of them join the Youth Conservation Corps and work in a park for the summer and get paid a stipend, and then fall in love with the system. And they have, at the parks now, they leave the managers in place. They used to move them around. And that didn't bode well for their relationships with their significant others who are, moving kids around for school. And so they've let these people stay, and they come to love the park, and they know every blade of grass, and they do amazing things. And so they're always trying to come up with that new thing. Like I know at Grayson Highlands, they're working on a bouldering support. I'd never known about bouldering until I went to Grayson Highlands State Park, but they have some of the best bouldering in the state there. And so they're really working on that. The paddle boarding is a new phenomenon that the state parks are seeing, attracting a lot of people. So they are trying individually to look at those trends and find out what people want to do. But what our biggest selling point is our cabins. We have 168, 100 and something like that cabins throughout the state, and there are weekends all year. You wouldn't even believe it, even in November, that they're all booked. So people like to be able to go to the cabin, be able to make coffee, etc. Tent camping is down. I would like to see tent camping get spiked back up. And in fact, I've talked about having a program where we could rent equipment to people so they would sort of get hooked, and then they would want to go back and do it. Last week, and you can tell I am Governor McCall's biggest fan. Maybe I'm not his biggest fan. Certainly, I'm in the top 100, I'm sure. I liked him. I knew him when he was running, and I was mayor. And I always liked him. I respected him. I thought he was great. Now I just think he's the greatest thing since sliced bread. He cares about one thing, and that's making change and doing the right thing. He's a great manager. He sends you out in the field and leaves you alone. He's always got your back. He always defends you. Anyway.
Thank you so much for being here. Particularly with your background with Hampton Roads, what is your perception of the groundwater situation in Virginia, or what is your office doing to address maybe dwindling supplies, particularly east of Ohio?
That's a really good question, and I wish more people knew and understand about this problem. I will tell you that it's one of the things that keeps me up at night. If I could do one thing in this 4 years, if I could save the coastal aquifer, I would consider myself us a success. We know that it's a problem. We have talked personally, and the governor's been personally briefed about it, and he has empowered me and DEQ to take a strong line on this issue, and we are negotiating with the top users of the water, which are Paper Plant and James City County, among others, to come up with a plan to reduce their permits. Their permits are in review. Of course, they don't want to do that, but we are holding the line. So that's one thing we're doing. We also got the Department of Mines, Mineral and Energy is run by the Secretary in Commerce and Trade. It's run in a different secretariat. And so with regards to fracking concerns in that part of the world, we were able to get them to enter into a memorandum of understanding with us that DEQ would have oversight of any permitting process. And then we worked with the AG's office on their recent AG opinion about local government authority over fracking and permitting. So that's what we've been able to get done thus far. And I don't see, when it gets to fracking, I don't see a permit request coming across our desks in time. I'm going to be there. We only got 2.5 years left. The way it's set up right now, I think it would take that long to get a permit. All the fracking leases are held by one company that their intent is to flip them. So by the time I knew that happened, I won't be Secretary of Natural Resources anymore. But I believe this AG's opinion empowers local government, and then if we can get these permits reduced, and like I said, we're holding tough on that, then I think that we can make a difference. Because it's also related not just to overuse of the water and lack of water, it's also related to subsidence, right? And so one of the things I think is interesting when you're in these meetings, people are like, well, nothing's risk-free when they're talking about fracking in the aquifer. They're like, nothing's 100% safe. I'm like, yeah, that's right. Nothing's 100% safe. I could be driving up here on 95 this afternoon, then sideswiped by a tractor trailer, right? And never make it to this meeting, and the world wouldn't come to an end. Nothing's risk-free. But it's a difference when you're talking about the entire 50% of the drinking water for the Commonwealth of Virginia. I mean, the risk is not worth it. It's too important. It's vitally, vitally important to our future. So, and I want to tell this anecdote about the governor and camping. Because last week, he and the First Lady had 30 4th graders from the Inner City Boys and Girls Club come spend the night on the mansion grounds in tents. It ended up raining, and they had to go inside. But the governor was out there playing basketball with them and making s'mores with them until 9 o'clock at night. I mean, it would just warm your heart. I mean, I don't know how many people would want 30 fourth graders and their chaperones, and there were marshmallows everywhere, and it was just a mess. And of course, once they got into the fire, my husband used to say, as long as anybody joined Boy Scouts, it's because you got knives and campfires. But they really had a blast. And finally, at like 9 o'clock, the first lady looked at me and she goes, we have house guests, so do you mind if we go inside? I'm like, it's 9 o'clock. I mean, I wanted to go home, and they're just such great sports, and they had such a good time. And the whole point of that was to get these kids outside, and they'd never been to the river, they'd never gone fishing, they'd never gone kayaking, and they got to do it all that day. And then be with the governor and first lady. One of the kids told me, he said, "This is the best day of my life." It was really, really great. Nobody ever asked for a television.
Well, following up on that, is there in your plans urban parks to transition people to what outdoors are so they can go and use the other parks that are more, I won't say wilderness, but wilderness oriented?
Harder to get to. Right, absolutely. A lot of those urban park issues are local government issues, but we certainly are trying to partner with local government. In fact, we have a park out in Southwest Virginia that's currently a municipal park that wants to get partner with us to get the flag, for lack of a way of better describing it, so it would get more traffic. And then our goal would be to make it sort of like a string of pearls, so that park would lead you to maybe go canoeing on the river that it's near, and then maybe go to the state park that's on the river farther down. So that's like a pilot park, community, local government cooperation, partnership, for lack of a better word, that we're looking at and involving ourselves in. And that's part of getting creative and doing something different. And it doesn't have to look just like a state park, and it doesn't have to be perfect. The important thing is to get people out there, right?
Sure, especially if you base it on watersheds.
Right.
Then you've got a geographic boundary, you've got water as the center event, you build from the urban back into the
Right.
less developed.
Right. The General Assembly actually put money in the budget this past year for the Clinch River project, which is exactly what you're talking about. It's water access around the towns and around bridges and different natural areas all along that river. And so it'd be, I think it's like a 30-something mile endeavor, once you add it all up. So, and another great thing that we've done recently is the Secretary of Transportation is a very open-minded person, and for the first time in history, we are going to sign an MOU with VDOT. In fact, the governor's going to announce it next week to work on water access around bridges and other places that VDOT owns property. For the first time before, they all said, we can't, we're not going to give up a right-of-way, we're not going to let you there, it's not safe. And finally, they're saying, this makes sense. We want to get more people out on the water and create more places for access. And in that regard, too, with Captain John Smith Trail on the federal side, the governor fell in love with the whole Captain John Smith Trail concept. And he's been to Werowocomoco, I don't know if y'all are familiar with Werowocomoco, and he successfully lobbied with the administration to have $32 million in the president's budget for the Rivers of the Chesapeake Initiative, which is a large landscape initiative through Land and Water Conservation Fund. And for the first time in history, we've never been able to get it on the list. Everybody out west always beat us. But the governor used his Rolodex and went to DC and lobbied hard, and so the vast majority of that money would come to Virginia for federal acquisition, federal projects. So we're really excited about that. Yeah.
Secretary Ward, thanks for coming. First of all, as a designer, I appreciate that someone is looking out for the style and aesthetics of things happening in the state parks. But I actually have a question about the Coastal Zone Management Program. I was wondering if you think that the network approach is the most effective way for coastal issues to be managed, particularly in terms of potential adaptation, planning, and implementation for coastal Virginia.
Well, I'm not familiar with the term that you used in terms of network planning.
So like multiple agencies basically sharing or trying to share information about all of the things they're doing as opposed to a consolidated approach.
Well, it's a challenge dealing with sea level rise and resiliency in general. We have, ODU has a program, William Mary has a program, the governor has a Climate Change and Resiliency Commission, which I'm co-chair with Brian Moran, the Secretary of Public Safety. You have the PDC down there, you have every city. Let me just use Hampton Roads for an example. You have 7 cities, each having their own separate plans, and of course, water's like air, it doesn't know those boundaries. I don't think that a consolidated plan is feasible feasible and under the current, because there's too many, there's nobody in charge. Because the state's got certain interests, and then each locality has certain interests, and so many of the issues deal with local land use decisions that I think it's really, really tough. I worked on something just involving the peninsula, you know, and you have Newport News, you have Hampton, and you have Pocosin. Well, who's really in danger of going underwater? Soonest is Pocosin, right? And so, and Newport News has less interest, but they've got a bigger population and more money. And so it's a very, very difficult issue to get somebody to be sort of in charge. Now, one thing we did do with the Resiliency Commission is I advocated for Brian Moran to be on it so that we can not continue to fight about whether or not it was real, right? So, and also so that we can have a chief resiliency officer. So he's supposed to be that person. To the extent we have one in the state,
Right.
that he is that person.
So, I mean, understanding that obviously it is a complicated issue with not necessarily one single leadership body, and not that you want the state to sort of step in and say, okay, this is what we're going to do, but what do you think is a potential solution for getting all those groups together and at least moving sort of in the same direction as much as that's possible?
Well, I hope that the Climate Change Commission is meeting, we have 5 work groups, and I'm hoping that, and they've been charged to come back with 3 or 4 things that the governor actually can do in the next 2.5 years. So I think that you might see some suggestion that we have some sort of consolidated effort between those entities that I just talked about at the state level. So, and I know that people are talking about that and working towards it. You know, it's like anything. It's like everybody's like, oh, this is my chessboard. You know, it's really tough. And there's so many competing interests. And so many people have so much to lose. You know, it's really difficult. One of the things I'm hoping will come out of that commission in that regard, which I hope will change the conversation, is let's agree on some sea level rise numbers, right? You barely get people to agree on things that are obviously factually right. You know, it's like 18 inches in 100 years, right? Well, let's talk about what it's going to be in 20 or 30 years, or something that we can understand in a timeline that we can imagine, rather than 100 years from now, right? So I'm hoping that one of the things we asked the commission to come back with is some numbers that will make everybody wake up and smell the coffee, and maybe that will drive, you know, the idea. You know, the reason they have all this work they've done in New Orleans is because of Katrina, and the reason they have all this work in New Jersey is because of Sandy. It didn't happen until there was a crisis.
Thank you.
We could keep you here all
Okay.
afternoon, I know. And we have, as I said, Richmond and Alexandria office, but I know we're past time, so I'm sorry to the other 2 offices up and down the Commonwealth. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Secretary.
Thanks, everybody.